On a pleasant spring day in April, I was reviewing plans for a new special exhibition in my office at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. Outside my window, cherry blossoms were swaying in the breeze on Beacon Hill, and passers-by walked with a spring in their step. My name is Melissa Thompson, and I'm 35 years old. I've been working as a curator at this museum for 10 years now. I wear my long brown hair tied back, and people tell me my warm smile is my best feature. While I maintain an intellectual air, my approachable personality has earned me the trust of my museum colleagues. Mel, David's on the phone. My secretary Janet poked her head in, and I couldn't help but smile. I met my husband, David Parker, right here at the museum. It was 3 years ago when he was working as a security guard for a special exhibition. Now he works in a special unit of the police department, handling confidential investigations. I rarely see him in uniform, which he explained is due to the confidential nature of his investigations. My husband cuts a fine figure in his navy suit, and everyone considers him a fine young man. We've been married for 3 years and live in a new house in the Boston suburbs. The house was a wedding gift from my father, who made his fortune in real estate development, and my mother, who's active in charity work. My father visits us every Sunday morning without fail. His motto is, "Only the best for my beloved daughter," and he's always concerned about my married life. My mother is passionate about local charity work, and I sometimes help out. The social connections my parents have built have been a tremendous help in my current work. I spend my weekdays immersed in museum work and weekends attending social events with my husband. That's how I spend my fulfilling days. Lately, my husband has been coming home a bit later, but I understand it's because he has more important investigations to handle. Sometimes my mother worries about me, asking, "Are you doing all right?" But that's just parental concern. Even on holidays, my husband responds immediately to emergency calls and stays informed about the details of cases reported on TV. I'm impressed by his dedication to his work. If I had to describe our marriage in one word, it would be trust. "It's my job to protect you," he says with a gentle smile while showing his police badge. That smile always melts my heart. Sometimes he talks about work, mentioning the names of real police officers, and I can feel his pride and sense of responsibility for his job. With support from my parents and my own income, we have no financial worries. We always do our Sunday brunch shopping at Whole Foods, enjoy weekend shopping at the Prudential Center, and share dinners at Atlantic Fish Company, where he whispers, "Your smile is what drives me." Every morning, I make sure to get coffee at Dunkin', and it's part of my routine to work up a sweat at the neighborhood tennis club. At the weekend farmers market, my husband remembers my preferences perfectly and selects fresh vegetables and fruits. At private club dinner parties, it's not uncommon for others to praise his depth of knowledge. The only thing that concerns me is how my husband's behavior has changed slightly recently. I hear him shuffling papers in the middle of the night, and his emergency call-outs have increased. Sometimes I see him at his computer in the living room late at night. But that must be because his important investigations are reaching a critical phase. Looking down at the misty Boston cityscape that morning, I was filled with anticipation for the new day. I had no way of knowing then that this day would dramatically change my life. That morning, the spring weather was more refreshing than usual. The magnolia flowers in the garden gleamed in the morning sun streaming through the window. My husband had woken up earlier than usual. I watched from bed as he put on his usual navy suit after his shower. "I've got an important case to investigate. I'll head out early," he said, adjusting his tie with unusual restlessness. I felt a slight unease at his behavior, so unlike his usual self. But that must have been tension before an important assignment. "Would you like breakfast?" "Ah, I'll eat at the station. We have a strategy meeting with the team." Saying that, he gave me a soft kiss on my forehead. Unusually, I had taken the day off and planned to focus on writing exhibition proposals at home. In my comfortable home office stands an antique desk, a housewarming gift from my father. The clock struck noon as I was absorbed in work in that peaceful atmosphere. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. The chime seemed to carry an ominous air into the quiet house. A delivery perhaps. Or an unexpected visit from father. Walking to the entrance, I peeked through the window and saw an unfamiliar woman. Though she looked at home in this upscale neighborhood with her refined appearance, there was something unsettling about her demeanor. When I opened the door, there stood a woman who appeared to be in her early 30s. She wore a Chanel suit and carried a Louis Vuitton bag, but her makeup was slightly smeared and her hair disheveled. Her appearance suggested either a long journey or deep emotional disturbance. "Are you David's wife?" Her voice carried obvious contempt. Her eyes looked me up and down as if appraising me. "Yes, I am, and you are." As I asked politely, the woman took a step forward. Her Jimmy Choo heels on the welcome mat echoed like my heartbeat. "I'm Rachel. David's true love." Those words made my mind go blank. It was a shock that rendered meaningless all the refinement and social graces I'd cultivated throughout my life. "What are you saying?" I asked back, desperately trying to control my trembling voice. "Leave him immediately. We're in love." Rachel's eyes were filled with anger. Behind those eyes, I could see a swirling obsession and hatred that I couldn't comprehend. I unconsciously took a step back. "Please leave. What you're saying is, you're just after his money." Her scream echoed through the quiet upscale neighborhood. I had lost even the presence of mind to worry about the neighbors' opinions. "David is mine. Someone like you, a spoiled princess, could never understand his true worth." We met every week. Whenever he said he had an emergency call-out, he was actually on a date with me. Each of her words cut deep into my heart like a knife. It felt like all the memories of our married life were suddenly being stained a different color. I desperately tried to maintain my composure. The crisis management etiquette I had learned as a member of the upper class barely kept me standing. "Please, leave. Otherwise, I'll call the police." "You don't get it, do you? This is your final warning." Rachel grabbed an expensive Murano glass vase that decorated the entrance and hurled it at me. It was one of my precious collections, brought back by my father from his trip to Italy. The vase spun through the air. The light reflecting off the chandelier sparkled beautifully, as if in slow motion. My attempt to dodge came a moment too late. With a dull impact, I felt something warm begin to trickle down my forehead. When I touched it, bright red blood. My expensive cashmere cardigan gradually turned red. At that sight, Rachel's expression seemed to freeze for a moment. Fear flashed in her eyes. However, she quickly turned on her heel and hurried away. Wait! The voice I tried to call out caught in my throat. My head was spinning, and I could barely stand. As I collapsed onto the marble floor of the entrance, I could feel my life beginning to crumble significantly. With great effort, I took out my mobile phone and called a taxi. I had to go to the police station where my husband worked. Surely he would explain this situation. This must all be some misunderstanding, I desperately told myself. Stepping out of the taxi that arrived at 1 Schroeder Plaza, I walked unsteadily to the reception desk. Blood was still seeping from my forehead. Here I was, standing in a police station with a blood-stained cardigan, I who normally maintained perfect makeup and composure in any situation. At the reception desk, a uniformed female staff member looked at me with concerned eyes. "I'm very sorry, but we don't have any police officer named David Parker." The receptionist's words reached my ears as if in slow motion. That must be some mistake. He's in a special unit, confidential investigations. My words gradually grew smaller. I've checked, but there's no police officer by that name at this station or any other station in Boston. Should I call an ambulance? That injury. The receptionist spoke apologetically but with certainty. Her kind voice only constricted my heart more. Before my eyes, everything I had believed in seemed to shatter like a glass castle, crumbling with an audible crash. The Boston spring sunshine remained bright, and people on the street went about their normal lives. But my world alone seemed to be rapidly losing its color. In the taxi, I kept calling my husband's mobile phone repeatedly. But all I got was the message, "The phone is turned off." With each throb of the wound on my forehead, I felt like I was gradually losing my sense of reality. When I returned home, surprisingly, my husband was waiting at the entrance. "Mel, what happened to that injury?" My husband rushed over with a surprised look, but at that moment, I didn't miss how his expression froze for an instant. It was the expression of someone seeing a dreaded scenario become reality. However, he quickly returned to his usual gentle husband's face and moved to get the first aid kit. "Let me treat that. It looks deep." I pushed away his arm. "Your mistress came. Someone named Rachel." My husband's hand stopped. I could see the blood drain from his face. "Mistress? What are you talking about?" "I went to the police station too. But they said there's no police officer by your name." My husband slowly took a deep breath and began explaining in a tone like someone soothing a troubled child. "Ah, that's right. I just transferred to the Special Investigations Unit last week. The records probably haven't been updated yet. His explanation was logical and convincing, just like the old him. But I wasn't going to be fooled anymore. Then why doesn't anyone at other stations know you? The special unit is highly confidential, and information isn't shared with regular police officers. I'll contact my superior tomorrow to confirm. My husband tried to place his hand on my shoulder while smiling calmly. However, that gesture now seemed full of deceit. Then who is this Rachel? Probably someone connected to a criminal we recently arrested. She's trying to threaten you to obstruct my investigation. I'll take measures immediately. When I heard those words, something definitively crumbled within me. Each word I had heard from him over the years seemed to be reconstructed as clever lies. That's enough. My voice was surprisingly calm, even to myself. That night, my husband promised to go to the station early tomorrow and check with my superior, before heading to the bedroom as if nothing had changed. However, the next morning, my husband was gone, and the safe was empty. Bank books, credit cards, and even my jewelry, all gone. As I stood dazed in the room where my husband's belongings had been neatly cleared away, it was as if he had never been there at all. In my panic, I had called my father. "I'll be right there. Stay calm." My father's voice gave me comfort for the first time in a while. An hour later, my father and mother arrived. Mother silently embraced me, while father immediately sprang into action. "First, let's hire a private investigator. And contact a lawyer." Father's cool judgment finally gave me the courage to face reality. Consulting with the lawyer, we first proceeded to freeze the bank accounts, but my husband had already moved funds from the main accounts. However, this was just the beginning. The first report from the private investigator was even more shocking. David Parker is an alias. His real name is James Miller. He has at least 3 other aliases and has received similar victim reports from multiple women. And most surprisingly, Rachel was one of the victims. She too had been deceived and had her assets stolen, just like me. As I listened numbly to the detective's report, I had to gradually accept that my entire 3-year marriage had been a fabrication. In the conference room of the private detective agency, I gasped as I faced the investigation report. The estimated total damage is over $5 million. We've confirmed at least 5 women who have suffered similar damage so far. Detective John Morgan pointed to the data displayed on the screen while continuing his explanation. Father sat next to me with a stern expression, examining each piece of data. James Miller, aka David Parker. Born in Chicago in 1986, 38 years old. While he has no criminal record under his real name, he has repeated similar marriage fraud under at least 3 aliases. There, my husband's unknown true face was being revealed one after another. His methods were extremely sophisticated. Morgan displayed a new slide. First, he selects wealthy single women as targets. He approaches them as a security guard or police officer at places where the upper class gathers, such as art museums, luxury restaurants, and charity events. I remembered our meeting at the museum 3 years ago. His clean-cut smile and polite demeanor then, everything had been perfectly calculated. Next, he poses as a police officer specializing in confidential investigations. This included thorough preparation, such as living in areas intentionally distant from real police stations, preparing police badges that look authentic, and mastering police terminology. The large screen in the conference room displayed photos of the forged police badge. Perfect forgery technique. Looking at it, I keenly felt my own foolishness. Furthermore, he skillfully manipulates victims' psychology. He pretends to have sudden, emergency call-outs to go on dates with other victims, explains unusual behavior using confidential investigations as an excuse, perfectly keeps track of police-related news reports, and weaves the names of real police officers into conversations. At that moment, there was a knock on the conference room door, and a woman entered. Rachel. I stood up involuntarily. Unlike our previous encounter, she now wore an expression of deep apology. Melissa. I'm truly sorry. Tears welled up in her eyes. Though still clad in luxury brands with a dignified appearance, this time I sensed not hostility but the pain of a fellow victim. Ms. Rachel Wilson is actually a key witness in this case. Morgan continued his explanation. She suffered losses of about $1 million in her married life with James, or rather, David, and subsequently began investigating his true identity. However, by the time she was getting close to the truth, James had already approached his next target, Mrs. Thompson. Rachel quietly sat down and began telling her experience. I too was completely fooled by him acting as the perfect gentleman police officer. After marriage, he gradually moved my assets, and finally, saying, I need funds for an important investigation, even my grandmother's inherited jewelry. Her voice caught. This time, Mother gently placed her hand on Rachel's shoulder. When I realized the truth, I desperately chased after him. Then I learned about your existence. But my way of warning you was wrong. I'm truly, truly sorry for hurting you. I silently held Rachel's hand. A former enemy had become a companion sharing the same pain. At that moment, Morgan's mobile phone rang. An urgent report. He checked the phone's content and tightened his expression. New movement from James Miller has been confirmed. In Seattle, it seems he's now approaching wealthy women posing as an investment advisor. Father immediately stood up. Report to the police. This time, we must catch him. However, it wasn't a simple operation. It would take a meticulous plan to corner James, who used multiple aliases and possessed perfect disguise techniques. Please let us help too, Rachel said with determination. We victims know his methods. Our testimony and cooperation will surely be useful. Working with the police, we set up a careful trap. The operation centered on a fake inheritance story. We published an article in a local Seattle newspaper about a large inheritance of a fictional businesswoman. This would surely catch James's interest. 2 weeks after the operation began, we were waiting in the lounge of the Four Seasons Hotel in Seattle. Together with Rachel and other victims, everyone was wrapped in tension. Then the moment came. He appeared in the lobby, wearing the same navy suit as always, wearing that clean-cut smile. But now, I knew better than anyone that that smile was artificial. Using the new alias of Michael Stewart, this time playing the role of a successful investment advisor. The police surrounded him as he headed toward the lounge where he was supposed to meet his target woman. I saw his expression freeze. And when his gaze noticed us hiding there, I witnessed for the first time his perfect mask crumbling away. "How dare you deceive me?" I confronted him quietly but firmly. I was no longer the woman who could be fooled. During police interrogation, even more shocking facts came to light. James's criminal history spanned over 15 years, with potential total damages exceeding $10 million. And it was discovered that there were multiple victims beyond the 5 we knew about. According to his confession, to perfectly play the role of a police officer, he had worked part-time at security companies while studying police internal affairs, thoroughly learning police terminology and organizational structure. Even the investigators were amazed at the thoroughness of his preparation. However, the most shocking thing was that he showed absolutely no remorse. "We were just targeted prey," Rachel whispered. "Yes. But that's over now." I squeezed her hand tightly back. Around us were the warm gazes of companions who shared the same experience. This incident took precious things from me. Trust in married life, property, and for a time, even my self-esteem. But at the same time, it also gave me new things. Strength I never knew I had, unexpected solidarity. And above all, an unwavering determination to reclaim my life with my own hands. At the Boston Federal District Court, I stood in the witness stand. "Please tell us about your meeting with the defendant and the details of your married life." I answered the prosecutor's voice calmly. I could now talk about those days without shedding tears. "We met at the museum. He was working as security." In court, charges against James including fraud, assault, and document forgery were being tried. According to the indictment, he had defrauded at least 8 women of over $12 million over more than 15 years. Victims took the witness stand one after another for the prosecution. Each testimony highlighted his clever methods and cruelty. And then came the day of sentencing. Defendant James Miller, alias David Parker, Michael Stewart, and others. The judge's voice resonated through the courtroom. "Guilty on all counts of fraud, assault, document forgery, and all other related charges. I sentence you to 20 years in prison." As murmurs filled the courtroom, Rachel and I held hands. A week after the verdict, we launched a new project. Marriage Fraud Prevention Support Center. At its founding press conference, I declared strongly, "We don't want this experience to be wasted. We want to reduce the number of people who fall victim to the same crime, even by 1. And we want to support the recovery of those who have already been victimized. That is our wish." Father promised his full support. Mother embraced me with tears, saying, "I'm proud of your strength." The center's activities received an even greater response than expected. Following Rachel's suggestion that we want more people to know about these fraud techniques, we held seminars across different locations, sharing our experiences and raising awareness. After one seminar, a participant approached me. "Ms. Thompson, I deeply respect your courageous actions." That man, Professor Michael Anderson, was a professor at the local law school. In his sincere gaze and honest character, I felt a familiar warmth. Time passed, and it's been a year since that incident. I continue to spend fulfilling days as both a museum curator and the center's representative. I've grown accustomed to life in my new apartment near my parents' home. Between preparing for the special exhibition, Rebirth, Stories of Regeneration, I sometimes share coffee with Michael, discussing art and life. Time with him is peaceful, never rushed. Seeing me like this, Mother's expression has grown more relaxed. Your smile has returned. Indeed, the wounds in my heart are healing little by little. It may not be a complete recovery, but those scars now serve as nourishment that makes me stronger. Meanwhile, James Miller was found to be involved in new fraud cases while serving his sentence. His prison term was extended further. He showed no signs of remorse, and instead reportedly spoke proudly about his methods. "He'll never change, will he?" Rachel said this while sharing lunch with me. Now best friends, we make sure to meet at least once a month to update each other on our lives. No. But we have changed. I smiled at the lemon tart dessert before me. Indeed, that incident took precious things from me. But at the same time, it gave me new strength and irreplaceable bonds. The support center continues to receive new consultations. We face each one with sincerity. Standing by those who carry suffering, walking together with them. Perhaps that has become the meaning of my new life. Trusting others is never wrong. I always conclude my seminars with these words. However, that trust should be built on the foundation of sincere actions that the other person has accumulated. It's not something to be given hastily or blindly. Outside the window, Boston's spring breeze is again swirling cherry blossom petals. But this year, that sight gives me new hope. Life sometimes takes unexpected turns. But each time, we can grow stronger. And we can find new paths. That's what I firmly believe now.